Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 395 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I love watching TEDx videos, and I'm looking forward to doing my own TEDx talk one day. If our listeners have a new idea for me to deliver in the form of a TEDx talk that I haven't spoken about before, then please let me know. I want to hear from you. And speaking of TEDx talks, we have a guest who's got her own. Dr. Laura Sicola is a speaker, coach, and leadership communication expert who helps people hone their vocal executive presence and communication skills to project a strong, positive leadership image, develop loyal, effective teams, and create their ideal workplace culture to reach their ultimate goals. Laura believes that your technical expertise only gets you so far. After that, your success is a direct result of how effectively you can communicate that expertise to others who do not have your skills and knowledge. Laura has worked with everyone from executives and aspiring execs at companies like IBM, Comcast, and the U.S. Department of Commerce, to executive directors at nonprofits, groups of entrepreneurs, and women's diversity initiatives. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Michael, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
It is going to be a lot of fun, I promise. It's been just a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better. And I know that our listeners want to know a little bit something about your undergraduate experience. So you went to American University for your undergraduate experience. Tell our audience, why did you choose American?
Oh, I was 100% sold on the idea of studying international relations and the whole culture and language and politics and all that kind of a stuff. And I couldn't imagine being anywhere other than Washington, D.C. So that was going to be a given. It was just a matter of where. And American's program was terrific. Their School of International Service is amazing. And, we're talking years ago. And at the time, there weren't a whole lot of programs that offered the opportunity to study abroad in Japan, and not just to do a semester abroad, but to do a full year. And I was actually the second cohort of students that was able to go to Japan for a full year academically. And it was just the most unbelievable experience. It was really terrific.
That sounds amazing. And you know what? You sound just like my daughter. She wants to study culture and politics. Like that's like her big thing. And she went to go visit Georgetown, of course,
Mhm.
in Washington, D.C., and she fell in love with it. I mean, she
Yeah,
just absolutely loved the campus, loved everything
beautiful.
about working in DC. I'm like a big STEM guy. I'm like, all right, you want to do well, do STEM. And she's like, well, I don't really like that. Okay. And so she's thinking about, just international. She's into languages. She knows Spanish and French and music, and she wants that, international piece. So it's like just talking to you, I'm like, well, maybe Washington, D.C. is a good fit for her after all.
I loved every minute of it. It really was. And I have a confession to make. I have two confessions, as a matter of fact. I did apply to Georgetown. I did not get in at the time, unfortunately. But, I went to American as another school that did say yes. And it turned out to be the best thing possible because Georgetown, at that time, at least, did not have the full year program. And my sophomore year, we stole the department chair from Georgetown. So I ended up having the best program one way or another. The best of both worlds all merged together. It was terrific.
Yeah, I think everything works out for a reason, and you were in the right place at the right time, and everything worked
Absolutely.
out well. I mean, later on, you got your doctorate at UPenn in
Yes.
educational linguistics.
Mhm.
So tell our audience, why did you decide to focus on educational linguistics of all things?
So there were a good number of years, 5 or 6 years between finishing one and starting the other. And in between, I became a teacher,
Mm.
and I was working in South Central Los Angeles. I was using my Spanish, which was another one of my languages. Japanese was my third, and teaching was in my blood. And I loved what I was doing, but I wanted to go beyond the traditional classroom. And I was focusing really on teacher education at the time, it was the language and the cultural part of teaching that was interesting to me. And so the research that I was doing was about looking at how people learn languages, how speech influences the way people learn anything. And there's a lot of stuff in there, but that was why I came to Penn to pursue that kind of career with the intention of being faculty, going tenure track and having sort of the full-time lifelong professorship job. And so to anybody out there who's trying to figure out what to do with your life, and I have a son who's a junior in college right now at the University of Pittsburgh. And he's, we talk a lot about what to major in, what kind of career path. All that matters is that you have transferable skills. Yes, get, STEM versus whatever else, but you know what? You can go into STEM fields as a marketing major. So there's lots of ways to bridge that divide, so to speak, but you need transferable skills. And who would have thought that someone who started out as an international studies major, and then taught public school, and then did a PhD in educational linguistics and learning theory, cognitive linguistics, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm an executive coach. And my son said to me a couple of years ago when he was applying to colleges, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do for a living? And I had to look at him square in the face and say, sweetheart, I did not know that what I do now is a thing until somebody offered to pay me to do it. But it's transferable skills. And there is actually a logical path between career step A, B, C, and D in academia and my academic degrees. I have a master's in multicultural education, bilingual education between the bachelor's and the PhD. But in the end, it all fits together. So just trust the process, but make sure that you learn how to write, you learn how to think, you learn how to, and go abroad just for some period of time beyond like a vacation with your family. Get out of the country for a couple of months, see the rest of the world. It just changes everything. There's my plug.
Lesson.
All right, I'm done. Have a nice day.
Listen, that's a great lesson for college students to really understand. Go back and listen to that again, because what Laura is talking about is just absolutely incredible. And you're right. There really is no straight line to success. I think that is kind of, what your son and my daughter and my son, that's, it's not a straight line. You're going to make a series of left turns and right turns, and you just have to trust that all of this is going to come together in some way in the future. And I was an accounting major, and obviously I'm a public speaker today, so very far from accounting. But as an entrepreneur, those skills of being able to know how to put together a balance sheet and an income statement is incredibly important to an entrepreneur. So it all worked out. You just don't know how it's going to work out.
Right. And there are certain building blocks you'll need, but you may not learn them in the same order. I was not a business major. I was certainly not an accounting major. I learned all that kind of stuff way later when I kind of went, I guess I'm in business. Okay. So let me figure out, what's that thing called? Oh, balance sheet. I should probably figure out what that is. Yeah, that's so you know what, you'll figure stuff out eventually, but basic business skills, communication skills are always important. Basics of this, that, and the other thing. It's transferable skills. That's my PSA for the day.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And you're going to have to let your son know that I'm speaking at the University of Pittsburgh in 1 week, next Thursday.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, on the 28th. So he's got to come out and check me out on campus. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Send me all the information about the event, and I will certainly pass that along. That's terrific.
I definitely will. And so I'm going to be speaking to the fraternity and sorority community there at the University of Pittsburgh. And, there's always conflict in today's student organizations. Everybody in the chapter, including your son, if he's in a student organization, they all want to go in their own direction, which makes it really difficult on the leaders of this student organization. So how can these students navigate a challenging issue in their organization without having the conflict turn into physical combat?
Yeah. It's so as the leadership, I think a big part of your job is to hear the constituencies, hear out the various members and their interests, and ensure that, most importantly, that everybody who's participating in the discussion feels seen, feels heard, feels understood. That's really critical. And it's very easy to get into the debate, back into the but. And one of the most critical skills and steps in conversation that I think people tend to forget or just otherwise miss in the part of that exchange is feeding back to the other person what you heard them say in an objective, non-judgmental, non-interpretive way. So if one of your people comes to you and says, you know what, the moon is made of cheese and we need to do a wine and cheese tasting part. You may think that they're bonkers. There's no way you think that's a good idea. But before you say no, or before you let somebody else say no for that matter, they need to feel heard. So to be able to turn around and say to them, okay, so Michael, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you clearly. Your argument is that, or your suggestion is that the moon is made of cheese, and so we should do a wine and cheese party. That would be a good suggestion, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yes.
Because if you can say yes, that's it. That that person feels heard and understood. You're not going, watch the eye roll, watch the voice. You're not going, so let me get this straight. You think the moon is made of cheese? Are you kidding me? That's not objective. That's not neutral. That's not diplomatic. And that's not respectful. That doesn't say we genuinely want to hear everyone's voice. Either you do or you don't, and you can vote on it later. They may get no votes, in which case, okay, that'll speak for itself, but they don't need to feel prejudged. They don't need to feel belittled, or only, certain group think is going to be acceptable. I heard an expression the other day, and I wish I could remember where I heard it from. But if there's 20 people sitting in the room who all agree on something, then 19 of them don't need to be there.
True.
That you're never going to get. And that was more about business development and, who should sit on the C-suite in the executive board, because you need to have good creative tension, productive tension, not conflict. That's different, or not combat at least. But to be able to acknowledge everybody's perspective and let them feel heard. People are much more able, A, to hear other people's perspectives, and B, to accept no as an eventual answer if they feel like their perspective has been accurately received and respectfully heard out, that they've been given their due. If it doesn't work out in their favor, at least they get that. But if they feel like you're not listening to me, the minute they feel that tension, you're not listening, or they can't hear anything else because they have not been heard first. So let everyone feel heard, and then they will be better able to hear additional perspectives as well. And that will grease the skids.
And you make some great points. I love every bit of it. And that's why I talk about building consensus. I feel like in today's fraternities and sororities, we just have this vote, and it's like majority rule. So 60% say yes and 40% say no. And we just go with the yeses, and then we move on. And then it's like, well, what about all those people that said no? Do we not want to hear why they said no? Like, it's going to take a little bit more time to build consensus, but we need them. Like, they are an important part of our organization. So we can't just like steamroll over them and expect them to be happy with the way that things played out there.
Yeah.
So
consensus is tough. That's, I don't know to what extent different groups have different rules about majority. Is 60%, is 70%, is 2/3, is whatever, versus no, we have to have consensus in this. And interestingly enough, I would also encourage people to say, well, what does consensus mean? Does consensus mean that we all agree that X is the best choice? Or does consensus mean everyone has agreed, or has at least accepted this moving forward, even if some people may not believe that it was the best choice, they're willing to move forward with it and to support the initiative, to be team players, to still volunteer their time and efforts to do whatever else in the interest of, we had to pick something and we're moving forward. But do they at least feel heard and understood? Their objections have been heard, their preferences have been heard, and maybe in the future we'll be able to explore some of their ideas better, or follow some of their recommendations. But for now, we're going this way. Do they accept that? Do they feel heard? And are they willing? Or are they do they have to go along because they're being forced, but they're really resistant, or otherwise going to just passively show up, but not really participate, or not contribute, or not be present while they're either physically or emotionally or otherwise. So that's a really important point to discuss. What is the definition of consensus?
Yeah, I love all of it. I think it's all important. Your TEDx talk was fantastic. And really in there, you're talking about mastering vocal executive presence. So let's start with the definition of what that means for our audience that might not know exactly what that means. Why would that be important to a college student or a recent college grad?
It's important to everybody. I mean, if you want to hear yes, then is important to you. So unless you're happy hearing no to every idea that comes out of your mouth, in which case you can just, hit end transmission right now. No need to listen to the rest of this. But it's very simply, there are 3 C's that I think everybody needs to master. And it's the ability to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. And just to unpack those in brief, commanding the room, look, it could be the screen, it could be one-to-one, one-to-many, it doesn't really matter. But the idea is, can you captivate someone's attention? Are they focused and listening to what you're saying? Do you command respect, which is different from demanding respect? If you have to pound your fist on the desk and demand that people pay attention and respect, you will never command it. Is there something about you that just makes people inherently sit up and pay attention when you talk? That's commanding. Thoughts on that one first? I don't want to keep going.
No, I think that's good. Give us some tips on how they can command the room. You said what not to do, which is to bang your fist right on the desk. What should they do to command the room then?
Well, the idea of the banging the fist is that's demanding. That's
Right.
not commanding. If you have to demand, you're already in trouble. That means that you lack the presence to be able to command it naturally.
Right.
So little things like, are you in the way that you stand? Are you fidgety? Is your body language showing that you're nervous to be there, that you're not confident in what you're saying? When you are talking, do you make a point and let it, with each sentence, allow it to end with a vocal period, or it sounds declarative, as I'm demonstrating now, where the voice drops at the end? Or are you saying everything like it's a giant run-on sentence and you're kind of babbling in a stream of consciousness, and as you're going, all the ends of your phrases and sentences end in that upswing, like I'm doing right now, na 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 na, and it's like, oh my gosh, please make it stop. My ears are bleeding. I just want to put my fingers in them, and it turns people off. You sound disorganized. You sound kind of desperate. You sound annoying to many people. And you certainly don't sound certain, because it sounds like questions instead of statements. So the certainty or the confidence in your own idea, is that vibe is lost. So all of those kinds of things. And of course, the language that you use matters too. Are you being diplomatic? Are you being offensive to somebody? Are you hedging too much? Like, and using a lot of fillers, the likes, so blah, blah, blah. All that undermines your authority. So what you say and how you say it will really establish that command presence.
Yeah, that is absolutely accurate. I've seen multiple examples of speakers doing both of what it is that you're talking about, and one is certainly much more effective than the other. Let's talk about the second C, which is to connect. And, we hear a lot about this on college campuses when we talk about things like authenticity, for example, or
Sure.
vulnerability, for example. And students today, what they're telling me is that they're having trouble connecting with other students. So if the student wants to connect with their audience, it could be maybe there's a fraternity out there or a sorority out there that wants to connect with potential new members for their organization. How can they better connect with other students on campus and get them to join their cause?
When in doubt, talk less and listen more. So what is it that, when you're doing maybe early in the semester, there's whatever week where you've got tables along the main campus quad, and you have your posters, and you're out there talking to other people, handing out flyers, inviting them to events of sorts to kind of check it out. Well, maybe just start by asking questions. What are you looking for in a community? What kind of stuff are you into? Sports? Are you into music? Are you into community service? Are you into, pick. So prompt, see what people like, and then what kind of stuff they were doing in high school, what kind of stuff, what are they majoring in? Where are ways that you can connect with them, but find out who they are first, instead of telling them who you are and hoping that whatever you first announce is something that's of interest to them. So engaging on the questions and finding that opportunity to build rapport. And it's not about being inauthentic or pretending that you are whatever they say that they are. That's not where we're going. But the more you understand about them, their interests, their desires, their concerns, then you can find a common point to address and then, or maybe somebody else to introduce them to who can speak more to those kinds of things, or who maybe one of your sorority sisters or fraternity brothers who has something more in common with them, whether it's their ethnic background or what state they're from or what they're majoring in or something, and say, oh, you know what, you should talk to John. Oh, hey, Johnny, come here a second. You got to talk to Mike. Mike's been doing, and good, then hand them off, but help them to find that connection, because chances are there's someone in there who that person will really feel much more connected with, possibly than you. So there's no ego in that. It's just helping people find that bond.
Yeah, and people do love to talk about themselves. So that you're kind of keying in on that, which is great. The question that I love to ask is, what do you want to get out of this college experience? It's an
Yes.
open-ended question, so it's not something they can easily answer with yes or no, right?
Yeah.
And then once they get talking, then to your point, you figure out, what they like and what they want to, how they see themselves when they graduate, and then you can show them how your organization is going to help them get there. Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's kind of the dynamic that I'm trying to set up. But I think you're absolutely 100% right. You got to be inquisitive. You got to be asking questions. You got to learn more about them. And then just this law of reciprocity is eventually they're going to want to know something about you too.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so
And we're
that's
not
really,
talking
really
about interrogating them, right? We're not just
no.
like, no, we're not gonna tell you anything, just more about you, more about you. We're not, no spotlight, no like chaining them to a chair. That's not what we're looking to do. But to your point, people do like to talk about themselves. So giving them that opportunity to, again, feel heard. Don't just say, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah. Ask a few additional follow-up questions. Show that you heard something they said, that you're interested in. Ask 2 or 3 follow-up questions first before you volunteer anything about yourself or your organization. Dig to know about them. Don't just look for the opportunity to say, oh yeah, that's like, and then share. Listen, ask 2 to 3 follow-up questions first. And I love the question that you asked, the what do you want to get out of your experience?
Yeah.
And a question popped into my mind as well that could be a good follow-up and or variant to it. Tell me what you think about this, Mike. Michael, is who do you want to meet?
Oh, that's a really good one.
What
Yeah.
kind of people do you want to connect with
Yeah, see,
here?
that's amazing because, these fraternities and sororities, I mean, they literally have hundreds of thousands of alumni members. And
Yes.
so if I can connect you to an investment banker in Boston and that's who you want to meet and that's one of our alumni and you tell me that's what you need, done. I got a cell phone number. We'll set this up tonight. So that's another really, really good follow-up question. I like that a lot because it does tap into the network, which is really one of the huge benefits of
Yep.
joining one of these larger organizations. So I think that's brilliant. And let's talk about the last C because there you want to close the deal. So
Yep.
let's assume a college student meets a business owner in their desired field, whatever that is. And now the student wants an internship or they want a job at graduation. So how can the college student close the deal?
And to clarify on that one, closing the deal for anybody out there who's listening, who's like, well, I'm not in sales, I don't want to be business. Closing the deal very simply means getting to yes.
Yeah.
So it could be a matter of simply saying, okay, I'm talking to somebody else on that, walk on freshman orientation week or whatever it is, and getting them to agree to come and check out this event that you guys are hosting, come to a party, come to the whatever. That's closing the deal. It's just getting to yes. It might even be let's follow up tomorrow. I'm going to call you or let's meet for lunch. And because I want to introduce you to so-and-so. Okay. That's closing the deal. It does not necessarily mean selling. It doesn't mean signing on the dotted line. It doesn't have to mean something really big. It just means moving the needle, agreeing to a next step forward, progress together, mutual agreement. So with that as context, look, an internship is great, but you're not going to close that internship until you've commanded the room and connected with that audience. So you're in an interview, or maybe it's just one of your sorority sisters made that connection. They promised you they would introduce you to the alumna who was there from, graduating class of 2008 or something. Okay, you're on that conversation. How does that conversation go on the phone, on Zoom, on wherever it happens to be? You can't close the deal until you've done the first 2 C's. Does that person feel like you're not just there to talk about yourself? Does that person feel like you were engaging as well as engaged? Were you answering questions as well? Were you asking questions that were interesting? Did you share? What does it take to have that presence that commands attention, not demands, that commands attention? And how did you establish rapport with her How did you connect with her as a person in that audience? And that will lead you to being able to close the deal.
Very, very good. I love all of it. And now, of course, I'm going to ask a question that has to do with me and helping me, right? So your TEDx talk has 6.8 million views. It's called Want to Sound Like a Leader? Start by saying your name right. And if I do want to deliver a TEDx talk at some point in the future, which I think the answer is yes, what separates a good TED talk from an amazing TED talk?
What they generally say as a rule of thumb is that a good TED talk will make people think. A great talk will make people feel, but a really exceptional TED talk will change the way people behave, will make them do something different. So a really important part of even getting the opportunity to give a TED talk in the first place nowadays is what's your one thing? Every TED talk has to have one core central value proposition. And what is your call to action with that, where you're hoping when they're done listening, they are aware of something that they weren't aware of before, they think differently somehow than before they started, they feel an emotion of some sort, or hopefully many through the course of the conversation, but they've helped them to feel something differently. And what do you want them to do? How should this change their life through something that they do differently as a result? Decide those three first, then build your TED talk.
Nice. I love that because I can put an action plan together just based on what you just told me. I have some ideas on what we're going to do. So this is really cool. I'm excited about it. Tell us more about your podcast. It's called Speaking to Influence: Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. What kind of guests do you have? What do you typically talk about on this podcast?
This is a podcast that is exclusively about the role of communication as an essential leadership skill. So each week I invite a senior executive, whether they are a chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, could be a vice president of some sort, but an executive of both for-profit and or a nonprofit organization. And they're going to tell some stories about how they learned to be more effective communicators in order to be more influential, inspiring leaders. Mistakes they made along the way, challenges that they had. And so you'll have a chance to learn from their experiences, from their stories, from their what they share as far as what they look for in new hires and in people who they want to promote into more senior levels, because you're only going to get so far up the career chain based on your technical expertise. So if you went into whatever STEM field or any arts and sciences, based on your technical expertise as an engineer, as a graphic designer, as a whatever it happens to be. But then there's a linguistic glass ceiling. And it's no longer about how well you execute technical tasks. There's a shift, and it becomes about how you lead other people who have those skills, or who don't, for that matter. So these are the stories that the leaders are going to tell from different stages along their own career path. And they have really ranged, meaning the guests have ranged. I've had leaders from huge companies like Amazon, from Comcast, from the CIA, to nonprofits such as Big Brothers Big Sisters, Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, from Women Against Abuse, Save the Children, lots of different, large and small, national, international, regional. It's lots of fun and always great stories. We have fun in the process. And I can't imagine anybody's going to walk away without going, wow, I never thought about that. And each guest in the middle has an opportunity to levy what I call the 24-hour influence challenge. So they talk to you directly and they challenge you to take one step, and it's whatever step is their choice, that you can complete within 24 hours. And it's one little thing, 24 hours to have more influence. And it just gets the ball rolling. So I encourage you all to check it out and see how many of those 24-hour influence challenges you can challenge yourself to do.
I'm intrigued. I love the idea of the podcast. I think it's fantastic. I can't wait to binge, just listen to every episode because I think it's going to be fascinating. So thank you for sharing that resource because I'm definitely going to go and check that out and listen to all of it. We also love really good food here, and I know that you happen to be a foodie as well. So the next time I'm in Philly, which is happening very often, I fly through there quite often, speak to a lot of universities in that area. Where should I go for an incredible meal in Philly?
Philadelphia is a hidden gem food wise. It's between Washington and New York, and a lot of people kind of fly over it, don't think about it, but there's great food in Philadelphia. So depends on if you're looking for like the good, midnight, whatever post bar kind of food, a good stick to your ribs kind of sandwich, or you want the fine dining experience. I think if you're looking for the fine dining piece, one of my favorite restaurants is called Scarpetta, which is in Rittenhouse Square. Amazing Italian food. If you ever watch the Food Network, Scott Conant is a frequent judge on Chopped and some other shows, and it's his restaurant. His flagship was in New York, another one is in Philly and some other places. And if you're going for the other end of the spectrum, I'm a big fan of Tony Luke's. It looks like a truck stop. It is right under the I-95 overpass on Oregon Avenue. Everything is outside. And I would highly recommend either the chicken cutlet Italiano or the Italian beef sandwich. Granted, I am not a Philly born and raised native. I've been here 20 something years, but I've never quite acquired, forgive me, all other Philadelphians, I've never acquired a taste for the cheesesteak.
Oh,
I just don't get it. And there's so many other amazing options. Like, why waste your time? I mean, you could try it if you want to check it off on a bucket list because you heard so much about it. Sure, come on over, try a cheesesteak. You might love it, you might not, but I think you can do much better. That's just my 2 cents.
All the Philadelphians just collectively just
I
had
know,
a
they went,
sigh.
no, they
Like,
just disowned me. They're like, get out.
She doesn't
She's a
like us.
suburbanite. She lives in the burbs now. She's not in the city anymore. We're disowning you.
Well, Scarpetta sounds absolutely fantastic. I live in Nashville, and like there's really no good authentic Italian food. And this is coming from a guy who was born in Manhattan, who understands Little Italy and like has
Yes,
phenomenal Italian food, and I get none of it in Nashville, and I'm so sick and tired of it. So absolutely, next time I'm in Philly, I'm going to go check out Scarpetta, and I will let you
absolutely.
know how that is. So if our student listeners, let's assume that they want coaching or they want to bring you in to speak on their college campus so that way they can all have better communication, where should they go to connect with you?
The easiest place is my website, which is vocalimpactproductions.com. And if you go to the contact page, there's a easy form right there to reach out, and feel free to just say, wanted to say hi, Laura. Just thought heard you on Michael's podcast and wanted to talk or just let you know, I loved this point, or he was terrific and, he made you look good. So I'm welcome to take all that kind of feedback, but reach out to me on the website. And of course you can go and connect with me on LinkedIn as well. That's always a good place. I'm pretty active there. And please do check out the podcast. So thank you, Michael, for the opportunity, for the little shout out for speaking to influence also.
Absolutely. Speaking to influence, communication secrets of the C-suite, go and check out that podcast. Go and check out Laura's TEDx talk, because I'm telling you, it'll change your life. It's called Want to Sound Like a Leader. Start by saying your name right. I think it's fantastic. Laura, you're amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this great information with our listeners today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Michael. I had a great time.
All right. Well, to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Laura, make sure that you like it. Make sure you share it with other college students. Make sure you share it on social media. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.